From Faithful Word Media, this is Healthcare Musings. I'm Dr. Hashem Hasabala. Hey everybody, Hashem Hasabala here. I am so happy to have you and Dr. Mohammad on the podcast on Healthcare Musings. He is a general cardiologist in Ohio, good friend of mine, great friend of mine. He and I go back many, many years. And he is well-renowned on social media. He has a YouTube channel with millions and millions of views. He's very active on X. He and I go back and forth. And actually, because of an interaction I had with him on X, I wanted him to bring him on the podcast and kind of talk about me a little bit, and then just in general about statins and lipids, and because we'll go into why I wanted to bring him on the podcast, and then he can also give doctors like us who are trying to get into the social media space and are not as successful as he is pointers, so that we can become hopefully maybe even half as successful as he is. I think I'll be very lucky. So Dr. Mohammad, welcome to Healthcare Musings. So happy to have you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. Just a quick backstory. When I was like 22 years old, maybe, I was in medical school in Chicago, and I had appendicitis, and I happened to land at your hospital. I think you were at Good Sam at the time. And I was there all night. It was like a ruptured appendix. They tried to do it laparoscopically. It didn't work. They had to go in, open me up. They took out like half my not colon, whatever that, at the end there, the cecum appendix, whatever, where it all meets at the end, the
the cecum, yeah.
Yeah, that area. And they had to take the whole thing out. And I was all drugged up and drowsy. My wife was there. It was really late at night. And you happened to be the overnight, I think, critical care physician, pulmonologist at the time. And so you came into our room, and my wife remembers this vividly. She says that you told her, listen, you go home and sleep, get some rest. I'll stay here with him. And then I remember we stayed up till like 4 a.m. talking about random stuff. I don't even remember because I was partially drugged up, but I appreciate that. That means the world to me, obviously. And luckily I'm still alive, and everything must have gone really well. So good job.
Oh, thank you. No, I was, you're a good friend, and I was very happy to be able to help, and that I happened to be there. So that was great. I'm so happy. That means a lot that I was able to help you, a friend and a colleague. So what led to this? There's a lot of people on social media. They talk about cholesterol, and the statins is just a big ploy by big pharma, and they just want us to be hooked up to these drugs. And just to give you and I kind of fell into that, right? So recently and it was from reflux. I know it was from reflux, but I had chest pain going up the stairs. I was out of town for work. And I know it was reflux. I had like tons of coffee that day. I didn't sleep very well. So I told my primary care doctor, and of course he panicked. So he got a calcium score, and the calcium score was 4, and which is not bad. I heard, so then I talked to my cardiologist, and he's like, okay, let's get a CTA. I got a CTA, and it shows minimal coronary disease in the RCA, minimum, like less than 25%. They didn't even do a fractional flow reserve because it was so minimal. I told my primary, listen, I don't want to take a statin. I told him, okay, fine, okay, let's just see. But then I started talking to other people, and like, man, my LDL at the time was 129. My HDL was 81. My triglycerides were 53. So I'm like, so what? So big deal. But then I started talking to other colleagues and neurologists and they just freaked me out about the LDL. So I broke down and I started taking rosuvastatin. And I just had my labs just the other day, and now my LDL is 58. And my triglycerides are super low, but and my total cholesterol went down, my HDL went down, and I started exercising more regularly as well. But is it really, like, don't we need cholesterol? The brain has cholesterol. The cell wall has cholesterol. Don't we need cholesterol? Now I'm stuck on rosuvastatin. It's generic. It's super cheap, very effective. Thank God I have it. No side effects, no myositis, and liver's good. But don't we need cholesterol?
So thank you for bringing all of this up. There's a lot to unpack there. So first of all, yes,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't.
No, it's totally fine. This is very common. This is like these are the most common 30 questions that I get, actually. but we'll start, we'll go one by one. So first of all, the most important thing to understand is, yes, you absolutely need cholesterol. There's no doubt about it. You would be dead without cholesterol. Every cell in your body, including like the lipoproteins that carry cholesterol, have cholesterol in their cell membrane. It's what makes it fluid. It's what makes every cell work. Lots of
Yeah.
processes depend on cholesterol to function. I mean, like you make all your cortisol and adrenal hormones and progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Your brain is made out of cholesterol. All of that, 100% true. The problem is excess cholesterol is, where does it go? The problem is, it's circulating in your bloodstream and it deposits in your arteries. So they've done a lot of studies on trying to figure out what is the amount of cholesterol that we actually need
Mhm.
as humans. And they have found that it's somewhere between like 15 milligrams per deciliter up to maybe about 40. There are people born with medical conditions called hypobeta lipoproteinemia. That the word beta is just a fancy word for the beta particle on low density lipoproteins
Mhm.
and other ones like IDL, VLDL, chylomicrons, all the atherogenic particles. When you have less beta lipoproteins, that's called hypobeta lipoproteinemia. These people are living their entire lives with LDLs of like 7, 10, 15, maybe 20 at the most. These people never get atherosclerosis. When newborns are born, and I'm not saying we're newborns, obviously, but when newborns are born, when you need the most amount of cholesterol to make your brain and neurons and myelin sheaths on your nerves and all that, their LDLs are somewhere in the range of about 20 as well. So there are lots of things in life that we absolutely need, but too much of it kills you. Water, for example, is one of them. You drink too much water
Absolutely.
too quickly, you will die. You will, get super severe hyponatremia, which is something
Yep.
you treat very commonly. Severe
Hmm.
hyponatremia, you have seizures and you can die. So that does not change whether like you need it or not. You absolutely need it. Now the thing is, every cell in your body can make cholesterol, so you don't need to try to raise it. You just need an acetate molecule and a citrate molecule, which every cell has anyways, and they make cholesterol as needed. The problem is we can't really shut that off. Your cells make cholesterol. Some people genetically make more, way more than others. Some people make way less than others. Like I said, some people are born with genetics where they make almost none, or like just just enough to be alive, which is great. Some people have familial hypercholesterolemia. You've seen some of those, I'm sure, that have like
Right. Oh
cholesterol
yeah.
under their eyelids and it's oozing out of their eyelids, basically, and their tendons, certain extensor tendons and what have you, because there's nowhere else for it to go. These people, if not treated, especially the homozygous ones, they'll have their first cardiac event by age 5 and probably dead
Wow.
by
Really?
30,
Age
13.
five?
Yeah,
Really?
heart attack or stroke by age 5. The
Hmm.
homozygous ones, the monogenic homozygous ones.
Okay.
The heterozygous ones they won't have their first event until they're about 30, 35.
Hmm.
These are the ones you've probably seen. I don't even see those ones. The 5-year-olds with that, we almost never see anymore. It's so rare, it's super genetic, and we screen for it very, very well. So I don't
Hmm.
think either of us are going to see those kind of patients. But the heterozygous ones we see quite frequently. There are heterozygous patients that have like the heterozygous, for your audience, usually means like you inherited only one gene. You didn't inherit it from
Right.
both parents, just from one. So those people have LDL cholesterols in the 200 to maybe 300 range, not like the 700-800s. The kids with the 5-year-olds, they're like in the 700-800 range,
Wow.
five,
Okay.
600, etc. So these people have events usually when they're around 30 to maybe 45, somewhere in that range, depending on how high it is. And if you look at the studies, every single study where they've looked at cholesterol in multiple different ways, they've looked at Mendelian randomization, which is, like I said, these genetic people are born with either really high cholesterol or really low cholesterol or anywhere in between. If you look just at that, you will find that the people with the lowest, like these hypobetas, have no heart disease to speak of, and the people with the homozygous, gene mutations from both parents are dead by like age 13 from a heart attack, multiple strokes, what have you. And there's a lot in between. Then they have cohort studies where they just like the nurses health study and the
Right.
physicians whatever and the union workers whatever, large cohorts, 100,000 people. They just kind of watch them over the years, regardless of what they do and regardless of how they act. They obviously correct for covariates and confounders. These are like, things like smoking, things like uh, obesity, BMI, diabetes. So if you took the same two people, same BMI, same diabetes, same smoking, same everything, and you compared only LDL, this is how you correct for these things. The one with the higher LDL always had worse cardiac events, more mortality, more all-cause mortality, more everything. So those are like cohort studies. Then they also looked at interventional studies where we lowered cholesterol. Now, these are the best. These are randomized control trials. So these are trials where we did an intervention, and it could be like you ate more fiber. It could be a dietary change. You switched saturated fat to, olive oil, or you did whatever. Like we did an intervention, whether it's medications, diet, lifestyle, exercise, what have you. Any intervention that lowered LDL cholesterol resulted in better outcomes. There's not one study you'll ever find where there was an intervention that lowered LDL and bad stuff happened. The most extreme example of this is the Repatha studies. These are PCSK9 inhibitors where they took people already on statins, already on Zetia, already on maximal medical therapy, whose LDLs are already well controlled in the 50s to 70s, maybe, well under 100, and they added on Repatha, which crushes people's LDLs. It can add an additional, sometimes 90% reduction when combined with other medications, even 95% reduction in total cholesterol, LDL, what have you, when combined with other meds. And this was called the Fourier trial. And they had people in that trial with LDLs of 0.2 millimoles, which like in American is 7, LDLs 7 milligrams per deciliter. So they crashed
Wow.
people's LDLs. And they didn't find any adverse outcomes. There was no side effects. There was no, weird stuff that happened. The only thing that was different was they had less cardiac events, less
Hmm.
heart attacks, strokes, etc. So they had an even lower rates of cardiac events. Now, the brain cholesterol is interesting because a lot of these people will say, well, don't you need brain? You don't need cholesterol for your brain. Isn't your brain made out of cholesterol? It is. The thing I'll point out to these people, a lot of them are misinformed. While it's a partial truth, there's a little bit of misinformation going on. Your brain makes its own cholesterol too, obviously. The lipoproteins, these lipoproteins don't cross the blood-brain barrier at all.
Okay.
However, that does not mean they can't affect your brain, and I'll get to that. But the brain makes its own cholesterol, and the interesting thing about brain cholesterol is that the half-life of brain cholesterol is 5 years. So, like a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, they have cholesterol in their brains that they had since they were born. And it's been there because the half life is 5 years, and every 4 or 5 half lives, half of it is gone, or finally it's gone. Then your brain makes cholesterol at a slow enough rate to replace the cholesterol that is gone. So they've not found adverse effects with lowering cholesterol and brain function.
So
They in
there's
fact
no, so there's no
they found
increase.
the
Sorry,
opposite.
there's no increase in dementia with
No, there's actually an improvement.
long-term statin use.
Yeah, so this is the cool thing.
That's what I thought.
There's a lot of studies now where they've looked. So the Lancet just this year, well, 2024 now, in 2024, put LDL cholesterol as the number one risk factor for dementia. The higher your LDL, the more likely you are to have
Really?
dementia. Yeah, it gets even better. So I've just posted some of these studies on my blog and Twitter or X, whatever it's called, and other social media platforms. They have done large studies now on statin medications, and they have found that statins reduce overall dementia by 20%.
Hmm.
And Alzheimer's disease by 32%. That was one study of about 5.4 million people. Another one, this was recently published that I just put out there also, they found that every statin reduced all forms of neurodegenerative disease. This includes like dementia, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, ALS, all forms of neurodegenerative disease were reduced by statin, and it seemed to have something to do with how potent the statin was. That one wasn't the potency. But that one, for whatever reason, pitavastatin seemed to have the best outcomes. Another one that they just published yesterday, I forget the name of the journal, but I just posted it. They had a 14 to 18% reduction in all cognitive dementia, what have you. But rosuvastatin had an up to, I think it was 48% or 28%. It had an even more profound effect because it is the most potent statin. So it's the opposite effect. Now, one thing I will mention is that because these lipoproteins don't cross the blood-brain barrier does not mean they can't affect your brain. They do get into the arteries that cause blood flow to your brain. All the tiny little arteries that, they go up your carotids in the middle, cerebral, cerebellar,
Hmm.
posterior, anterior, they go all into your brain parenchyma. That means like the white matter, the gray matter in your brain. The little blood vessels that go in there, they get plugged up too, just like your heart, just like your legs, just like your kidneys. They get plugged up and they give people little tiny strokes called lacunar infarcts. You've seen these on CT scans. I'm sure
That's right.
since you work in
All
critical
the
care,
time.
you see
All the
these all the
time.
time. Little lacunar infarcts are small little infarcts, and they do cause memory loss, cognition, tremors, wobbliness, depending on where these infarcts are. And the problem is it's an insidious onset. You get one little one, you're probably not going to notice a huge difference. Another little one here, another little one there. Then you can't remember your mom's name all of a sudden, or, whatever it might be. over time, you get like this really weird, like hand tremor. And, you
Mhm.
know, it just happens slowly and insidiously. And people don't realize it till it's a little bit too late. So that is one thing that now we know we got to be super aggressive about reducing LDL so that people don't also get newer degenerative disease, not just reducing cardio vascular disease. The other thing people like to say is that, well, don't you need cholesterol to make testosterone, vitamin D,
Right.
estrogen, progesterone? Absolutely, you do. And your testicles and your ovaries and your adrenal glands and every cell in your body can make all of those things. Even if your cholesterol is super low, even like the 4-year trial with people with really, really low LDLs, they have not found that it decreases your testosterone. Now, there is a backup plan where, let's say, you're critically ill, like the patients you take care of. They're in sepsis, they are ARDS, they need, stress dose hormones and steroids and all that. If your testicles or adrenal glands, more in this case, needed extra cholesterol to make more cortisone or testosterone or whatever it might be, they would not get it from low density lipoproteins. They would actually get it from high density lipoproteins. So the HDLs is where they would
The
get it from.
HDL.
There's a receptor on there called a SRBC1 that goes out, grabs an HDL, takes out the cholesterol, and like shoots it back into your bloodstream. Not LDL. So LDL has no effect on that. And even
So
that,
then why do we have LDL? I think God makes everything for a purpose.
so I'll get to
Did
that in
we?
a second.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I'll
Sorry.
get to that. So there's more. So let me just finish up the testosterone thing. So the HDL serves that purpose if needed, and that purpose is not served very often. Very rarely do your testicles or adrenal glands or estrogen or ovaries need to actually go and take cholesterol out of HDLs. So that doesn't happen often, but it is like the backup plan. So now, like you said, now the question is, so why on earth do we have LDL if it's so bad and doesn't seem to serve a good purpose? Why do we have it? So there is a very good purpose. Um, we normally think of HDL as the molecules that take cholesterol out of your arteries, right? At least that's what we were taught in medical school, 30 years ago now, whatever it was.
Right.
Turns out that HDL does not have a protective effect. We used to think that the higher the
Really?
HDL, yeah, we used to think that the higher the HDL, that offset the LDL. Like if your HDL was 60 or 70 or 80, like, oh my God, that's amazing. Turns out that none of that is actually true. All that matters is the LDL number. They've gone back and corrected various studies and cohorts, HDL to LDL, and what have you. They found that regardless, at every HDL level, let's say you took people with HDLs of 100, 80, 60, every quintile, at every HDL level, it was the LDL that determined their risk. So regardless of what your HDL is, your risk is solely determined by your LDL level. So why do we have LDL? This is a really good question. So your HDL, and let's just say there's two molecules, right? There's an HDL and there's an LDL. These are not to size because these are tiny compared to LDLs. Your HDLs go to your arteries and take out cholesterol, right? That's one of their purposes. They cannot, and they're supposed to return all of it to the liver, and they do, but there's 27 times more HDLs, and they're tiny. They're like 8 nanometers, 10 nanometers, whereas an LDL is like 20 or 20 to 22 nanometers usually in size. So they fit a lot more cholesterol. So part of the LDL's lifespan is to connect with an HDL. They like meet up in circulation. They
Mhm.
connect. They call it like almost like having sex. But they connect. They hook up in circulation. The HDL gives its cholesterol to the LDL, and the LDL returns it back to the liver for elimination too. So that is part of the purpose that LDL serve. This is called indirect reverse cholesterol transport. There's reverse cholesterol transport, which is the HDLs taking cholesterol back to your liver, and then there's the LDLs helping them. A huge part of their lifespan, they're connecting with the HDLs, collecting the extra cholesterol that they have, and also taking it back to the liver. So that is the
Okay.
one of the main purposes that they serve. And HDLs are not always good either. There's parts of their lifespan where they're not doing very much. So that's kind of like the story of what lipoproteins do in circulation, the processes they serve, and what they do. Now, the issue is all of the cholesterol eventually ultimately ends up back in your liver. Um, and then your liver kind of breaks it down, sends it down your bile duct into your intestines. The problem is your intestines absorb most of it back. So it's supposed to be eliminated, and a good portion of it is, but a lot of it is reabsorbed. So that's why adding a medication like you were mentioning, adding a medication like Zetia, which is a cholesterol absorption blocker, it kind of sits in your intestinal cells and makes it, it affects a transport channel called Niemann-Pick. It makes you not reabsorb cholesterol as much, so you kind of poop out most of it or a lot more of it, let's
Okay.
say. So what I do with patients is I usually add Crestor and Zetia. You know, you said you take Crestor. I take it too. I've been taking it since I was like 26. My LDL was like yours. It was 128.
Mm.
Um, about 129 and a half, I think. I was like, I don't want to be the guy that's like half a point away from abnormal. Back then, 130 was normal. Obviously, that's not normal anymore. So anyways,
Well, it was listed on my labs as normal. Less than 130 was normal. And I
yeah,
was
they need
still
to
129,
some
but
some labs do have like the older guidelines. That was the 2013 normals. Now 2018 they changed those, but under 100 should be normal for all comers, assuming they have no risk factors. But I
really
usually add
under
Zetia and
100.
Crestor.
But my risk is like 1% when I put in the calculator,
Okay, let me
the
ask you a question.
CVD risk.
Yeah, so those we'll get to the risk calculators. Those are kind of useless, but let me ask you a question. And since you're a pulmonologist, I love this question because this is like the best analogy for this. If you had a patient that was smoking, right?
Hmm.
You would tell them every time you see them to continue smoking,
No, it's of course not. I
right?
always tell them
So
to quit to stop smoking.
right. So what if they tell you, Doc, I'm okay. I keep getting CT scans and my lungs are clear. There's no nodules. I should keep smoking, right? It's okay. What
No,
would you
because
say?
the smoking, the cigarette smoke keeps damaging your lungs.
Right. So you wouldn't wait. So let's say the patient's like, listen, I'm only 20 years old. Why should I worry? I'm smoking. My CT scans are clear. Why do I need to worry about lung cancer now? What would your response be?
Because you could get lung cancer down the line even when you quit. So the less you smoke, the better. I mean, that's just clear. Yeah.
So LDL cholesterol is the same story. A
Same
lot
kind of
of
thing.
my well, let me explain to you because you were talking about you had a calcium score that was like 10 or 4 or
4.
something like that.
Yeah.
4. So calcium and I think visually it's better to explain it, right? So here we go with the models, right? So this is what normal endothelium looks like, right?
Hmm.
There's nothing going on here. As cholesterol starts to build up, you notice that the artery remodels outward, right? It starts to go
Right.
down instead of like inwards. It tries its best to stay as wide open as possible. You
Hmm.
don't get calcium until like the later stages. So calcium would be like finding lung cancer on a CT scan. You wouldn't tell the patient to continue smoking until we finally find the calcium or the cancer, right?
Oh, so
So
the calcium gets deposited late in the
it's later
disease process.
stage or even end stage atherosclerosis. And then you said you had a CTA that showed a 25% blockage. So you have
No,
imaging
less than 25%.
less than
Minimum.
25,
Minimum. Yeah.
minimal. So you have basically imaging proven atherosclerosis at this
Yeah.
point.
And
So,
6 years ago, 6 years ago, I had a cardiac cath because I was having real chest, like my
and
troponin
what
was
did they
4.
find
I
on
had chest
that?
pain, and it was clean, totally clean. The
Good.
cardiologist said you can drive a truck through your vessels. It turned out to be myocarditis.
Yeah.
So that was 6 years ago, and so
And again,
already
like
in
you could have plaque down here and we shoot the dye through here, even a CTA chest, you shoot the dye through here, looks completely clean. We do a cardiac cath, you're shooting the dye through here, looks completely clean. Meanwhile, in the arterial wall, you have actual, tons of cholesterol going on.
oh,
So I think
okay,
that's one misnomer. A lot of people, these online influencers say, but my calcium was clean and my CCTA, my, coronary artery, even a cardiac cath, we could do a cardiac cath on you. Like, hey, we could drive a truck through your arteries. It looks amazing. But you
that's what
have
he told me.
yeah, and that's why I said it because you could still have atherosclerosis, and obviously if you have calcium, we have imaging proven atherosclerosis at this point. That's quite later in the stage. It's not fresh plaque. It's been there for ages because fresh plaque is soft. It's vulnerable. It eventually necroses. Eventually it crystallizes. Then more macrophages and come in and like all this stuff happens, and eventually
Hmm.
you get calcium. It's not like a brand new thing that happens the first right away. So it's a
So
later stage
it's
finding.
late in the stage. Mm.
Right. So that's why I don't like waiting. And I don't even order, calcium scans and CT scans because I mean, I read them, like cardiologists read these all the time. But to me, if your LDL is high, your LDL is high. Like, why do you want to wait? Like we know from multiple trials now that LDL number above 60 milligrams per deciliter, and most people are building plaque, with very little exceptions. That was the earlier rosuvastatin trials, the Jupiter trials, the PISA trial recently, also the same thing. When your LDL is above 60, most people are laying down plaque. So do you really
Mm.
want to tell someone who has a 129, 129 is fine, you're okay. You only have 4 points of calcium, which is like end stage. I mean, it's not, I'm not trying
Wow.
to like scare you or freak you out or anything. but I believe there's a lot of this uh, miscommunication or misunderstanding in especially on social media. Someone's like, I did a calcium score and it was 0. My LDL's 300. I'm good. Well, but you're only 20 years old. This stuff takes decades to build up. You know,
Right.
it's not like if a 20-year-old was smoking and came to you and says, my lung scan is clear, I could keep smoking, you would think they're insane, right?
Right. No, I agree.
I mean,
Well,
exactly.
okay,
Like
so let me play devil's advocate. Why?
yeah,
Okay, then all this whole stuff is just you're just a shill for the drug companies, and the big pharma is just wants us to be dependent on their medications. Statins fix everything under the sun. They're the best things since sliced bread. That you're just a shill for. You're probably on the payroll for big pharma. You're just a shill for statin. All these studies. I mean, what's your response to that? Because there's a lot of skepticism because of what happened in the pandemic, because with the vaccines, and now, like, okay, I'm a critical care doctor, pulmonologist.
I
I'm
mean,
not taking a
you
COVID
work.
booster. I'm not
Well,
taking a
nobody is
COVID
now
booster.
because it's become so
It's
minimally like
become
so look, it mutated. I mean, I'm not like an
it.
immunologist or virologist or
No,
anything, right?
it's mutated. It's just a bad
Yeah,
cold.
it
But they
mutated.
keep
So
pushing to give
virus
the COVID booster again and again and again and again. So there's a lot of skepticism on the part of a lot of the public
absolutely, and it's
about
fair.
the
So look,
pharmaceutical industry.
but I think you have to also look at the historical time that we were in. March 2020, we had no idea what was going to happen, and a lot of people died. I mean, it's not a joke.
No, 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 no doubt about it.
We were wearing spacesuits in the hospital. I mean, you remember
But
this,
no,
especially you with
I was a
pulmonary.
big proponent of the original
Yeah,
vaccine series and maybe the
for
first
sure,
bivalent booster. But
absolutely.
now it's
Now you don't.
ridiculous.
Now we don't need to do it. Absolutely. Like right now, it's. I think it's very optional. I haven't gotten one since the
No, I
pandemic,
haven't
but
got one in 3 years. And
exactly
neither my kids either. Yeah,
same here. Nobody gets it now. I mean, I totally get that because it mutates. So a virus's job is to try to stay alive. If we keep killing it, it's going to keep mutating to spread to more vectors, which means it needs to not kill the vectors, right? So its job is to
exactly.
not die and not kill the host so that it can spread to more people. So it mutated to a point where it's not really killing anyone, but it's super annoying, but it can spread to others, right? I mean, that's what happened with all the viruses, even like the original H1N1 in 2005 and
Mm-hmm.
2008, all these other little flus that would pop up, avian flu and swine flu and whoever mom's flu, like all these things pop up. They're kind of pretty, deadly and potent in the beginning, but as they like mutate to stay alive and not kill the host every time, they become, it's like you get a sniffle and you're fine, like no big deal.
No, exactly.
So I
So
get
yeah, so you're just a thing. You're just a shill for the. I'm being done. I'm being
yeah,
devil's advocate.
obviously. So no, so here's the thing. People like to say that, and it's super easy to look up who's getting paid by big pharma. You can go to CMS or openpayments.cms.gov, type in anybody's name, and you can see how much money they've received. And it's easy. It's super accurate. It's like SEC filings. You cannot be like do any inside trading or what have you, because it's
Right.
super regulated and it's strict, and they have to report everything. Like even if they give you a article, like one time I asked the guy, he was like trying to convince me that his drug is amazing. I'm like, dude, show me the articles. He's like, if I show you the articles, I'm gonna have to put you down for $18. I'm like, what? It's like,
Are you
dude,
serious?
don't worry about it. I'll find the articles myself. Like, that's not a big deal. And then I didn't know that. Like, I had no idea. Like, sometimes they bring you the article because it's a reprint and they had to order it from the New England Journal. You get charged that $18 and they got to put it on your thing.
And they put it on the database.
They have to
Oh my
type it
God.
in. Yeah, so it's wild. So, anyways, I told them you don't need to bring me the articles. But, anyways, so all of that is reported. Super easy to figure out. A lot of these people that say you're a shill for big pharma, like they don't realize that statins are actually generic, and they cost like $2 maybe for a 90-day supply, with the
Oh
exception
yeah.
of
Super cheap.
pitavastatin. With the exception of pitavastatin, they're all generic. There's 7 of them. 6 are generic. 1 isn't. I've never prescribed pitavastatin myself because the Crestor is way more potent and it's way better. So
Rosuvastatin is the
Rosuvastatin, right? The
generic.
generic name is Rosuvastatin. So I don't understand that argument that we're trying to push these super expensive drugs. The problem is the people that argue this are actually trying to sell supplements that are like $400 a month, or I mean, like they're like, don't go to your doctor. Your doctor is lying. But buy my supplement, and it's like $100 a month or $400 a month, whatever supplement to supposedly lower your cholesterol. Buy my CoQ10 or whatever the heck it is, whatever they're selling, and
Right.
there's no evidence that it does anything. And I tell people, like, if these supplements worked, these natural products worked, they would actually be medications. That's how almost all medications started. I mean, like
Right.
aspirin is oil of wintergreen. Coumadin, which all of us use all the time, is
Rat
sweet
poison.
clover. Well, no,
Hmm.
it's sweet clover. Like originally, there was cows that would go graze in one pasture and be dead the next morning from internal bleeding, and they found out it was some kind of specific sweet clover
Oh,
um,
interesting.
that was doing it, and that's why they're green. The pellets that they give the rats are green because it's like sweet clover.
Oh,
Same thing with so many medications. The number one prescribed blood pressure medication, lisinopril, came from viper venom. Ozempic and all these GLP-1s are the saliva of a lizard in Arizona called the Gila monster.
really?
Yeah, digoxin comes from the leaves of a foxglove plant. They found that when
Hmm.
they would make certain salads with the leaves of certain plants and flowering plants outside, people would get very tired and lethargic and be in complete heart block. And they found out, there's a medicine in those things. It's called digoxin.
That's
It can do,
that's crazy.
yeah,
That's
it's
crazy.
wild.
So should should everyone be on statins? Just everyone,
I
or
don't think
those who have high lipids?
I don't think everyone should be on statins. That would be kind of crazy.
Okay.
I think that people who have LDL that is not controlled by diet
Hmm.
should definitely be on statins for longevity. Even like let's say like someone like you, well, you have calcium, but let's say somebody
Yeah, I mean,
who's
I have, honest to God, heart. And so, yeah, my wife rolled her eyes, and my partner rolled her eyes when she's like, I go, listen, because I have heart disease, and they're just like, oh my God, they're rolling.
heart disease
She
for
rolls her
what?
eyes like,
I mean, you
oh my.
do. You officially have imaging proven heart disease without question.
There you
So
go. I'm gonna tell my wife that.
I don't think that's debatable. But you don't want that to get worse.
No,
So
I
in your
don't.
case,
I
if you
don't.
have imaging proven heart disease, you want your LDL under 55. And you said you're 58, so you're close.
58 or 53, something like that.
Yeah, I would just add Zetia 10 as a buffer to like just protect you a little more. My LDL is 41. I'm on Crestor 10, Zetia 10. And it got
Mm,
me down to like 41, 42, something like I've been like that for ages. So that's what I would recommend. I mean, I'm not your doctor, but I am
okay.
licensed in Illinois.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
I mean,
I'll
you can
see.
run that by
Maybe I'll wait
your
until my next
cardiologist,
lipid.
obviously.
Yeah, maybe until my next lipid panel, and if it's still above, you think it
You
should be below 55,
Yeah, once you have imaging proven plaque,
not
or
70,
even
because
in your carotids. So 70 would be if you just had a risk factor. So the new guidelines, I guess I should start there. The new guidelines that were published 2018 say that all comers should be under 100, right? This is everybody. If you
okay,
have a risk factor, and risk factors could be like you're overweight, you have hypertension, diabetes, even just a family history, you have you smoke, you're a male over 44, which I know both of us are,
we
or a female over 55. That's a risk factor. All
hmm,
of those need to be under 70.
okay,
If you have had an atherosclerotic event or imaging proven atherosclerosis of any kind, like even just some carotid plaquing, mild plaque here, a little bit of this, then you need to be under 55. If you
hmm.
have a second ischemic event or you have this thing called lipoprotein A elevation, you need to be under 40. So
Oh, wow. Okay,
that one thing I would recommend you get checked. There's two things I think the three blood tests that you need to know your lipid or your heart score or risk would be a fasting lipid panel, which everybody gets.
right.
You also need something called an apolipoprotein B. This is this B molecule on the lipoproteins. It's a way of counting up atherogenic particles. All the
Okay,
atherogenic particles have a B lipoprotein, whether they're chylomicrons or VLDLs, IDLs, LDLs. All the potentially atherogenic particles have a beta lipoprotein on them. So if you
okay,
get an apolipoprotein B, that will tell us your, risk because the LDL cholesterol is generally calculated, it may not be super accurate because they take your total cholesterol, subtract out HDL, and then divide your triglycerides by 5 and subtract that out, and that's your guesstimate or estimated
of
calculated
your LDL.
LDL.
So it's
Right. So
not measured.
it's pretty accurate, but it's not like exact.
Huh.
The only other
Okay.
test you should add to that is something called a lipoprotein A. So this is like your normal, LDL lipoprotein. There's one that has something around it called a kringle, and the kringle, um, this is called the lipoprotein A. So in addition to the B, in addition to this blue one, they have this kringle around it, and that makes it 6 times more atherogenic. 3 to 6
Mm.
times more atherogenic. These are like the 40-year-olds and the 50-year-olds are getting aortic valve replacements and quadruple bypass at age 30, but their LDL looks good. Like, well, what happened? His LDL is only 70. Like, it doesn't look horrible. How did this guy end up with a aortic valve replacement and a single vessel bypass? Well, they have lipoprotein A that's elevated. So those 3 tests you should definitely get. So fasting
What, do those
lipids,
have to be fasting?
the second 2 don't. Fasting lipids mainly just so we can get a fasting triglycerides. I mean, as long as you haven't eaten in an hour, it's probably fine. And then
Okay.
the ApoB and the lipo A, you don't need to be fasting at all. Those are more genetic tests that
Okay.
really
Okay.
fasting doesn't
And you're
really.
saying Zetia just to get it below 55.
Yeah, just so
Zetia.
you're like certain you're under 55.
I see. Should I just go up on the rosuvastatin?
Well, here's the problem. If you go up on the rosuvastatin, you're only getting an additional 6 to 8% lowering. So let's say you're at 58, you might go to 52. But if you add Zetia, you could drop 15 to 25% more. I can almost guarantee you'll be like 40, 38, 45, maybe.
Huh. And there's no bad effects from Zetia?
There always could be. I mean, all medications can have side effects. Zetia in some people does also cause muscle aches. It's way more rare than statins. The newer statins don't have it as much. Simvastatin had it the most. The Zocor. That's why really nobody should be on Zocor. Plus, it has so many interactions, and you can't be on this dose and that dose with this medicine. So Zocor, I don't know. No one should really be using. Pravastatin and Lovastatin are the older ones that come from fungus. I mean, that's another medication that comes from nature. They come from fungus, sort of
Wow.
like penicillin.
Yeah.
The synthetic ones, the new synthetic ones like atorvastatin and rosuvastatin, they're pretty clean. They have no interactions, way less side effects. There could still be some, but it's just far fewer than the others.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. I'll definitely reach out to my primary. I'll send you after the show. I'll send you my lipid panel, and you can kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
advise
send
me.
it. We could do an
Yeah.
analysis or something.
So before we run out of time, I wanted to. You're big on social media. You're very successful. What tips do you have for docs like me who are just getting started? My podcast has not been as long as yours, and I'd love to I'm not going to stop practicing. I'm a full time critical care doctor, and I love it. And I also love podcasting, and I love writing and everything. What kind of tips do you have for
Yeah, I
docs like
remember
us?
you used to write a lot, and I loved your posts. I remember reading them. You used to have a blog, probably on Blogspot, if I remember
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah,
correctly.
yeah.
And they were very educational for me because I was still like in medical school at the time. I can tell you what I think doctors shouldn't do. So I'm a fully practicing physician. My day job is my actual job. I do this for fun. I do it for education. Whenever I'd give lectures at medical schools or conferences, people would always come up to me like, "Oh my God, you're like the best speaker we've ever heard. Is there any way we can download this or whatever?" So I just started putting them all on YouTube. Like, don't worry, it'll be on YouTube. So I started putting all my lectures and presentations on YouTube with like the slides and everything. People can go watch it or download it or screenshot it, whatever they want.
Hmm.
And they got some traction. People liked it. Some of the videos have like hundreds of thousands of views. I think overall my channel has like 3.5 million views or something. There's not a
That's
million.
awesome.
There's not a ton of subscribers. I think it's like 20,000, maybe 25,000, something like that.
That's more than
But
what I have. So that's fantastic.
well, thanks. I mean, but it's taken a long time. Like some of my lectures are so old that it wasn't even called YouTube at the time. I think they're from like 2008 or 9 maybe, but I took off some of them. I did disable some of them because the data has just changed. I don't really care for the views, but if the data has changed, it's not accurate. I'm not going to leave a video up. I don't really care.
Sure, sure.
I will tell you that I think people should be genuine and they should be ethical. My biggest pet peeve is when a doctor starts going on social media and they do things just to grow. Like they become unethical. They like want to sell supplements and they do a deal with these aura rings and like they just start getting on the fringes of science and medicine. I don't care to do any of that because my actual job pays me a lot of money. I don't need to do any of these things.
Right.
I don't need to scam people. I don't need to do any of that. So I think the most important thing, and I don't know how I exploded on social media. It literally happened after the pandemic. I think people were maybe thirsty for knowledge or like real medical information. And I never once talked about COVID. So it must have been after the pandemic, maybe like a year or two later. But I think people are thirsty for real, actual doctors. As you've noticed on Twitter, for example, most of the doctors on there giving medical advice and information have all been involved in ethical violations, scams, lost their medical licenses, have no idea what on earth they're talking about. Some of them aren't even doctors. They just pretend to be. They call themselves doctors like they're physician's assistants or chiropractors even, or, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, which they are doctors of chiropractic, obviously. but they're not like a medical doctor who takes care of like real patients. There's a
Right.
big difference between like an actual pulmonologist, cardiologist, real doctor that sees patients every day, and someone who cracks backs for a living or teaches, in a PhD program. Not saying that they're bad. There's definitely a difference though. Like a PhD is the science behind a lot of what we do. Like the guidelines. There's guidelines for this and there's guidelines for that. But then there's like, what do you do in real practice? Like in rural emergency rooms or hospitals in Chicago,
Yeah.
suburbs. How do you actually practice? There's a big difference between the guidelines say anybody walks in with a non-STEMI or a STEMI, like a heart attack, they need to be on these 10 different things. Do we really put everybody on 10 different things the second they walk through the door? No, that's not practical, nor has it really been proven to be super effective. But it's a good baseline. Like if you're a new doctor who has no idea what they're doing, if you do these things, most of your patients will probably be fine.
Hmm.
So, how to grow on social media? I don't really know. I think you should be genuine. I don't think you should make things up. I don't think you should do things just for clicks or views or, things like that. Um, I'm not like a social media expert, obviously, but I
How
have
often do you
experience.
post? I mean, do you post like is there a cadence that you
I
do? Like
I
on
post
LinkedIn, I
a
post.
lot. I've
I do
posted
that. I
things.
see that you're all the
I
time on my
I
feed.
have so here's my system, I guess, if you want if I want me to explain my system. So first of all, I got on TikTok a couple years ago. I think it was like summer of 2022, maybe. A friend of mine, we were at a pool party. She was like, "Hey, listen, you need to go on TikTok." I said, "Why?" She's like, "The algorithm." She's like, "You will explode on TikTok. Just go on
Mm,
TikTok. Trust me on this one. I'll help you. Just start posting stuff about heart disease and health on TikTok. I guarantee you'll explode." I'm like, "What do you mean like that? What is TikTok? There's a bunch of kids dancing." She's like, "No, no, no, it's not kids dancing. Just trust me. There's a lot of adults on there, but you don't see their stuff because of the algorithm. It'll find you your audience." She said, "TikTok will find you your audience. You just got to start posting." So I'm like, "All right, well, let me try." So for like a week, I would just post stuff about heart disease. So I went from like 10, 20 followers, which were my family and kids basically, to like it was like 1,000 after a week, and then like 2,000. She's like, "Okay, here's what you got to do next." She would talk to me all the time. She's like, "Listen, go to that video, pick some of the comments and respond with a video." I was like, "How do you respond with a video to a comment?" She's like, "There's a camera, just press it and just respond with a video." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I did. So eventually I got the hang of TikTok, and I got to like 10,000 followers pretty quickly, then 25, then 100,000, 200 something. I don't know what it is now. So I'd mainly post to TikTok, and it's a great community, and the TikTok algorithm is beautiful because, and that's why the other groups don't like it. That's why like Facebook and Google and all these other platforms are trying to get rid of it because it's
yeah.
blowing them out of the water. Like their algorithm is just insanely brilliant. It finds you people who want to watch your stuff. Like you won't see any of
Mm,
the nonsense. You'll just see like what you like. It's a brilliant algorithm. I think that's why it's viewed as threatening to the other, older platforms: Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever,
mhm,
Instagram, even. So I think that's why people didn't like it. It's not just a bunch of kids; like literally the people in there talking to me, and it has a way more community feel. I feel like on TikTok, it's a community. Like people know me. Like, "Hey, Dr. Allo, you're back. What's going on? What did your kid get in high school?" Or like in math, you said something about math last time.
oh
Or how's your
wow.
shoulder? How's your shoulder doing? It
But
looked like
then I want
you were
people to
wearing a
listen
brace.
to I want people to go and listen to the podcast episode. How do you do that on TikTok? I've always struggled with that.
TikTok is a little tricky. On Twitter, you could post the link
Right.
to the
Twitter, you
Apple
can post a link.
Podcast or the iPod. You could
Yep.
do a little video, be like, "Hey, I interviewed Dr. Allo. Search for medical musings on your favorite podcast player." You could do that on Instagram and whatnot. On Instagram, there's these chat bots that let you chat with people. So what you
Okay.
could do on Instagram is be like, "Hey, I just talked to Dr. Allo, comment podcast, and I'll send you the link." And you can send them a link to the iTunes episode. And there's these chat bots that once they type podcast, it'll auto respond and send them the link. Those work great. On Instagram, that's a brilliant feature. Instagram and Facebook, the Meta platform, lets you do that, which is
Hmm.
brilliant. I love that feature. But back to the TikTok thing. So what I do, so I decided I'm going to take all my TikToks and send them out to every platform, right? So I post only to TikTok. I decided to pick the platform that had the best video editor. So I picked the TikTok because it had absolutely the best video editor, like
Oh
it's
yeah.
hands down the best video editor without question. I just posted TikTok, and then there's an app which I can send you the link to it if you want. There's an app,
Yeah.
it's a website. It takes my TikToks, downloads them, removes the watermark, and it posts them to all the other platforms within like moments of when you post to TikTok. So
Oh
that
wow.
was kind of like this this
And you
this
put,
way I set
but
it up.
you're sometimes my podcast episodes are 15 minutes long. Can you go that long on TikTok? You can't really.
No, you can't, but you can promote your thing. You can be like, hey, I just did a 15 quick minute episode on such and such. Actually, I think they upped the limit. I think you can post 10-minute videos on
10-minute
TikTok.
videos, but you can
You can
promote them on TikTok. I think I'm going to
you can
start doing
absolutely
that. I think,
promote them. And you know what you really should do? The one thing I love about TikTok even more is the live feature. You can go live on TikTok. Once you got about 1,000 followers, I think it's still 1,000. You can just go live. I used to go live every single night almost answering questions about
wow.
cardiology. Like, hey, and the people ask me about it. That's why I have like all these like visual aids here because
Yeah.
people would ask me questions. I have like, hearts to show them the valves. I got like, little stents to show them what a stent looks
Oh,
like.
that's cool.
I've got like, little like pacemakers and loop recorders. So I would go live on TikTok every night just answering people's questions, and
Okay.
they get value and you get like credibility, almost like people view you
Yeah.
as an authority. There's a few critical care docs on TikTok that you'd easily follow them. Just type in critical or pulmonary or something. I'm sure you'll find them.
Okay.
But they're very good, and they'll go live too, and they'll answer questions. You can kind of see what they post and go from there. One thing you could do is go to their videos and answer questions in the comments, and you can answer one of their questions with a video of your own, which really
Mm,
can help you attract new followers. But I like the
okay.
TikTok because it's like a community. I usually go live on there most nights out of the week when I'm not on call,
Hmm.
and people watch it and they ask tons of questions, and you get like hundreds of followers sometimes on there just watching, and people that are not even
Wow.
followers because TikTok shoots it out to everybody. Like that's what I like about their algorithm. Even if you have 0 followers, your video can get 10 million views overnight if it's a good video. So
Wow.
even if you
Okay.
have no followers, if your video is good, you can easily get 10 million views in one night, like
That's crazy.
without even trying. Like they don't care about the number of followers. This is how their algorithm works. You post a video, it shows it to 10 people. If those 10 people watch it all the way through, it'll show it to 100 people, then 1,000, then 10,000, then 100,000, then a million. Like it depends on how engaged they are and what the watch time is. At least that's what I seem to understand just
Mm,
based on some research. That
okay.
seems to be the algorithm. It'll show it to a variety of people. If like
Yeah.
one genre of person watches it all the way through, it'll show it to like the next 10 of that type of person. Let's say it's like white males who like guns. I don't know. It'll show it to those 10 people.
Right.
And if they watch it all the way through, it'll show it to the like next 100, the 1,000, whatever. And you can get like 10 million views overnight because the algorithm is really good at finding you people that would like to watch your stuff, and it finds you
Hmm.
your audience. Like I went from a couple hundred, like 10 followers to like 100,000 within like 3 months, and then it was like 200,000. Now I'm kind of like hovering in the 200s, I think.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but
So
it's a
just
very
then, yeah, I'm gonna start promoting I started because I think every one of my podcast episodes now is gonna be video. I used to do a
yeah.
lot of audio, but I think video is where it's at. I can put it on YouTube. I can promote it on Instagram and
And
TikTok.
then once you get your stuff on YouTube, there's an app called Opus that takes like good clips from your video based on watch time and creates little shorts that you can post to TikTok, which gets reposted to all your other apps. And you can put in the
Oh,
caption, watch my podcast on YouTube or something like that. To
okay,
get the full
cool.
episode, watch on YouTube. I know I can show you all this stuff. I'm really fascinated by it. I'm super
Yeah, no,
geeky into technology,
that's
and I
cool.
don't really care. I'm not doing it like to get popular or famous or make money off of it. I don't really care. Like it actually costs me money to do all this, like to pay for that app that sends out your videos and edits them, and the apps to do this, and the hosting of the podcast and the YouTube and the editing and all that. It costs me like probably $1,000 a month, if not more sometimes. Like it depends. And I don't really care because I just want people to have good, real information from an actual real cardiologist, not Dr. Chiropractor that says cholesterol's okay and your brain needs it. Take my supplements and let me crack your back instead. Like, I want people to have real medical advice because literally that's who you're up against. You're up against Dr. Berg, who's like, take niacin, it lowers your cholesterol, but it also kills you. Like it's toxic to humans at the doses they're suggesting. Like, I mean, what this is nonsense. Like, why is a chiropractor giving people medical advice? It's just insane. And then you get the comments that are like, my grandma smoked and she lived to 107 years old. Like, okay, great. Let's suggest everyone starts smoking. Like, that's not how science works.
That's right. I
There's
know.
gonna
Right.
be there's gonna be a person who smokes like a chimney and doesn't get lung cancer and lives to
Yeah,
100. Absolutely. Just like in cholesterol. There's going to be a person who has a really high cholesterol that doesn't get heart disease and lives to 100. We don't have a good explanation. They have some really weird genetics, but do you want to tell everyone to start smoking so they can live to 100? The
no,
statistics
no,
don't bear that out, right?
that makes sense. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. This is awesome. I'm definitely going to have you back on Healthcare Musings, Dr. Allah. Thanks so much for your time, and this is fantastic. And well, we'll debate further, and it's been very illuminating for me. And definitely follow Dr. Allah if you're not following already. And he's definitely going to be back. So, Dr. Mohammad Allah, thanks very much for your time, and thanks for being on Healthcare Musings.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching. Sign up at healthcaremusings.com to get every episode delivered directly to your email. And please don't forget to leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much.